you may or may not be used to if you haven't gone to this release yet. And this functionality is a new functionality in this release. And both of the user interface and this functionality are going to be added to and improved upon in the future releases. So your presenter today will be Larry Selby. And Larry, I'll introduce yourself and get started.
Great. All right. Well, thank you, Gary. So my name is Larry Selby. I'm a solution consultant working with Siemens. I specialize in Polarion. I've been doing this almost 5 years. Time flies while you're having fun. And, prior to this, I worked with some other similar tools. I worked at IBM and other companies. So I have a background in all this sorts of stuff, requirements management, task management, application lifecycle management. So I'm happy to be here today. As Gary said, the topic will be document baselines and collections. So what are we going to discuss today in our 30 minutes? So as Gary mentioned, I'm demonstrating with Polarion 2020 Release 1. And as you can see here on the Project Explorer sidebar, it has a refreshed user interface. I'm not going to be highlighting every one of those changes, obviously, but you will notice some of the colors, the iconography, the forms have been updated and refreshed. And as Gary said, this is going to continue to be, the user experience is going to continue to be a development focus in Polarion beyond this release. The bulk of our discussion today will be about the new 2020 Release 1 feature, document collections. We are very excited about this feature. This is something that I've worked within this context and these use cases within Polarion and prior releases, and as well as customers before I used Polarion. And I think this satisfies a key need to be able to create collections of documents in context, which we'll be discussing. The other thing that we're going to be touching on is a document baseline feature that was released 2 releases ago in 19.2, September of 2019, and that is to be able to see documents within the collection that are approved in a baseline state. So what is a collection? So this is a common use case for a collection. And so let's say that your organization is using a systems V model and you have different teams. Let's say you have a team working on the highest level of requirements, let's say a user needs specification, different teams working on lower level specification of systems that refines or satisfies these high level user requirements, and so on down the chain to high level and low level software specifications that link up. And let's say I want to have these grouped, and furthermore, as you can see in this diagram, these happen to be all in version 1.0, but these could be in different versions. The user need could be in baseline version 1, specifications could be in 2, high-level software requirements 3, and you get it. And the idea is that I want to preserve these collections of documents as a group, and not only in their different baseline states, but I want to preserve the link relationships between these various artifacts as per these baseline states. And then I want to be able to have a system of records so I can go back and I could say, okay, what was all the documents that were contained within product delivery release 1.0, and what were all the link relationships and associations and versions of these artifacts at that particular point in time. Okay, so that's the purpose of a collection. The other thing is that if you look at this other link here, we want to be able to link different subsequent versions of these documents, like let's say I'm working on version N of a system level specification, and I want to link that to a subsequent user needs specification that's still in development. And these are both in development, say, because waterfall is not, working to a strict waterfall methodology where user needs are completed in baseline before you author system level requirements and so on and so forth is very rare And in truth, just about everybody is working under a concurrent engineering paradigm. So we want to be able to gracefully handle the situation where we have different versions of these specifications, and we want to be able to link to these and yet get to the point where the end result is that we might have a product release version 2.0 or 3.0 and all these relationships intact. Okay, so let's get to the demonstration. So I'm here in the Drive Pilot demo project, and I think that most of you that are on the call are familiar with Polarion, basic Polarion, and this is, I chose this because this is an out-of-the-box project template or demo project template that's included in the install. And if you were to look here at Open Project Group, this is an option to install these projects here. So I made some minor modifications and configuration changes to this template, but and I'll highlight these as I'm discussing them throughout the demo. But excuse me, drink of water there. What I was going to say is that the collections are configured out of the box in this Drive Pilot demo project. So let's look at collections, and you can see that I have two collections which are open, and I have a systems collection and a requirements collection. This requirements collection is closed, and here's the time and date that it was closed in. And when I look at the contents here, I can see, okay, here's the description. This contains multiple levels of requirements documents, somewhat similar to our use case that I highlighted in the diagram earlier. I have a high-level project scope. I have a system requirements specification, and then I have a software requirement specification. And I have all these different documents in different folders, and these are also associated with different baselines. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open this system requirement specification, and a couple of things pop out here. So the first is this flag here. So this is a document baseline, and as I said, I'm sure most of you are familiar with Polarion. If I would look at the history of this document, now I can see there is a baseline version of this document, and this may seem like a minor feature, but this is something that our customers have been asking for because, yeah, it's great to be able to see all the revisions that have occurred in this document and be able to access them and compare them, but sometimes customers and users are only concerned with the significant milestone revisions and not so much with the work in progress revisions, like in revision 1118, I changed a typo or something like that. So you could go ahead and click the show only baselines, and this allows you to just see the baseline revisions. So just pointing out that feature. And then the other thing is that this belongs to this requirements collection version 1.0, and that's within the context of what I'm viewing it now. Okay, so if I look on the Project Explorer sidebar here, I can see that all the favorites and the other folders and documents have been filtered out, and this is in part of the user experience refreshing and redesign is to make things as simple, as easy as possible. So you can see only those documents that are contained within the context of this requirements collection. Okay, so let's scroll down here. And I happen to know that if I scroll down and I look at, let's see, iPad and Android applications, that these are satisfied by software requirements. And so if you look here, you can see there's a little hourglass by these different software requirements. And what these are saying is, this is revision 1046, but more significantly, if I were to open this, this is not going to navigate me to the baseline version 1.0 of this software requirement specification, which, by the way, I'm going to reopen this. is the version which was contained in this collection, right? So all these links and the status of these documents and the links are preserved as the historical versions that are contained within the collection. Okay. The other thing I wanted to point out here is if I go ahead and I look at DP314, I can see that it's not linked to any software requirements or it's not satisfying any higher level project scope, user needs or requirements. But if I wanted to say, okay, let me look at this document outside of the context of the collection, and I would unclick that. And now I'm going to go back down to DP314, and I could look and I could see it's linked to a risk. And if I were to open this risk, you can see that it's part of this risk specification here. So what we've done here is the default configuration in the collection is that it is not only showing just the contents of the collection, but it is showing only the linked artifacts that are contained within the collection. And that is configurable. You can turn that on or off. But in many use cases, there might be many links that are associated with these different work item artifacts, and we don't want to see all of those. Okay, so I'm going to, at this point, I would normally stop for questions, but I'm going to continue with the demonstration because we're halfway through, and we'll field questions at the end here. So now I'm going to go ahead and work on a systems collection, and I saved myself about 30 seconds by hitting create and then typing this in, but that's how you would do it. And you can say that this collection contains system level documents, so system requirements, system test specifications, system V&V plan. And so what's the next thing I would do? I want to add these documents to the collection. So I'm going to go ahead and filter by system. And I said system requirements. I'm going to add this. And then I want a system test specification. And I'm going to add this. And I want a system verification and validation plan. I'm going to add that as well. And save this. Okay. So unlike the closed collection that we were looking at earlier, where these were all baseline versions of these documents, the more common scenario is that you would be editing these documents as they exist within the collection. And then let's say I go ahead and I go through an approval workflow. I edit this, I approve it. Then perhaps I would pin this or associate this with a baseline version or revision and continue to work on these other specifications. And by the way, you can reopen them or set them back to the head revision and so on and so forth. But the idea is these are still under a state where we're still editing them. So I'm going to select this system requirement specification, and we're looking at the document properties. It's in a version 3.0 in a draft state. And so let's go ahead and let's make some new requirements here. So I scroll down here and insert a paragraph above, and I'm going to say the vehicle shall have a heads-up display feature. And then I'll say the HUD shall flash yellow or red based on warning or error conditions, danger. As specified. So then I'm going to go ahead and tag this as a requirement. Then I'm going to tag this as a requirement. Save this. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the system test specification, and then I'm just going to create a link. So we're still in the head revision of this system requirement specification and test specification, and I'm going to say, let's create a link from here to this new feature, or new requirement, sorry. Go ahead and save this. And if we refresh this, and look at the work item properties, you can see that we created this new link, and it's not a historical link. So I'm going to go ahead and advance the status of this document. Obviously, the purpose is not to talk about workflow in this short session, but I would go ahead and send this to review. You might go ahead and send these particular individual requirements for review. They might go through a review process. You might have different email notifications, and people might comment and use discussion threads and open and close them. But let's say, go ahead and say that all occurred, and we mark this as reviewed. Then we get to the next step where we want to mark this as approved. So I need to apply an e-signature. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to apply my e-signature in accordance with 21 CFAR Part 11 and two-stage authentication. And now I'm going to go ahead and approve this. And okay, it's telling me that I need a baseline name and a baseline description. And this is because, and I told you I was going to point this out where I've made changes. I applied a workflow condition to this approval so that it's going to automatically create a document baseline when I perform this. And part of this is there's a requirement that I have these fields filled out. So I'm going to say, I'm going to use an imaginative name, baseline version 3.0. And now I'm going to go ahead and save this. And let's say, you know, in your concurrent engineering example, it could be that at some time shortly after, or even there, at some point in time, you're going to go ahead and create a new revision, and people are going to be able to want to work on this document. Even though I'm going to go back to the collection here and now pin this at version 3.0 for the system requirement specification. So I'm going to choose baseline 3.0. And as I said, this got created through the workflow. And I'm going to save this. Okay, so now we're going to go back here. And we have this document specification. Just to be sure, I'm going to open this up. And this is version 3.0 of the specification, as you can see here. And I'm going to make a different link, okay? So I'm going to say that this, this test case is now linked to the second requirement that I created. And I'm going to go ahead and save this. And if you note now, it's showing that the link for the HUD feature and for the second requirement is pinned at version 3.0 or baseline version 3.0, whereas in the past it was the head revision. Okay, so what I'm going to do at this point in time is I'm going to quickly baseline the system test specification. So I'm going to create a baseline because I'm not going to step through the whole approval process. Let's call this baseline version 2.1 so that I can be able to close these different collections, this new collection that I created. And I'm going to do this here, create baseline for the verification and validation plan. And I'm going to call this 3.1. All right. And I'm just going to close some of these windows here at this point in time. And now I'm going to go to the collection, and I'm going to start to close it. I'm going to specify version 2.1, I think I called it, for system test, and 3.1 for the verification and validation. Did I not create that one? I thought I had just done that. All right, so I'm going to choose a revision. I thought I just created that, but I'll choose revision 672 instead in this collection. And now these are all tied to specific baselines or revisions. And this is a condition to be able to close the systems collection. So I can now go ahead and say I want to close it. And the point here is that all the relationships as the versions of these documents and all the relationships will be captured as they exist at this point in time. Okay, so there's just one last thing that I want to start to talk about, and then we will conclude the demo. I'm going to go back, and let's look at this project now from the perspective outside of the collections. Okay, so if we go ahead and we look at the system requirement specification, and this is the one that we were working on, and we look at the history, you can see all the work that we had done within the context of the collection, the baseline versions. If I were to delve into here, these were all the new requirements that I added, you know, the links that I had created to the test cases. They're all contained there within the history. And then if I scroll down here and I look at these new requirements, and I look under the work item properties, I can see that these are still linked to the test cases that I linked them to within the collection, but these are associated with the head revision of these artifacts. So I can continue to work on these and modify, change these, and if, of course, if these parent requirements were to change, you know, they would be reflected in the linked relationships to these test cases. So that said, this concludes our demonstration.